Greetings and welcome to Child Welfare Practice. I am Leah Doherty. I'm the instructor for this course, and I am going to go over the syllabus for you, provide some more detail of some of the assignments, and hopefully answer some preliminary questions that you may have. So looking at the syllabus, it says that this is course SW 535. There are two sections of the course, O1 and O2. My name is Leah Doherty, and I'm the instructor. I've listed there my Marywood email, but if you know other emails for me, such as leahdoherty@comcast.net or leahdohertymsw@gmail.com, those work as well. My phone number is on the syllabus, and I've also provided that in an email. That is the best way to reach me this summer. I much prefer that you contact me by phone or text than by email, as I don't check my emails, as often as I do my phone. I also must apologize if there's a dog barking in the background. That's one of my dogs. Okay, so the course syllabus, the rationale. Child welfare has undergone a major transformation over the last 20 years, actually probably 40, 45 years, if we go back to some of the early legislation that was passed in the 1960s, and you'll be reading about that in your first week of readings. So as child welfare has undergone this transformation and social work has grown as a profession, we look at the ways in which child welfare works within the social service delivery system in each of our communities and the way in which it acts independently, distinctly, providing its own unique service. So we will, in this course, be talking, certainly the theme is child welfare, but we will be looking at issues of children and families, both within and outside of the child welfare system. So about a third of the students taking this course are child welfare employees here in the state of Pennsylvania, and the other two-thirds are social work students, possibly some students from other disciplines, taking this as an elective course and with an interest, hopefully, in working with children and families. So as I get to know you more, I will try and tailor some of the work that we do to your individual interests, always holding to the focus and the theme of child welfare. So over since the 1980s, I really think that the focus has become on, as the syllabus says, providing services in a least restrictive environment. And that's not only for individuals in the child welfare system, but for individuals in the mental health system, in now what we call the intellectual disability system. In some ways, I think we're seeing some in the movement in the prison system with specialty courts. So how do we provide the best practice in the least restrictive environment? And we'll talk a lot about that throughout the next 6 weeks. But coupled with that, in this mandate, or not mandate, but this movement towards least restrictive environment, is this mandate to protect the well-being of children. It wasn't until probably the last 50 years that our federal government really saw a role for itself in family and child welfare. Prior to that, we really had an opinion that children were the property of their families and that child welfare, children's rights, were not something that the government should interfere in. The first movement in this direction was the child labor laws of the early 20th century, when prior to World War II, we began to look at what's appropriate and safe work for children. I know I've gone on the coal mine tour here in Lackawanna County, and they talk about breaker boys, young males mostly who would go down into the mines, and they had very dangerous, work at the doorways and in providing, materials up and down into the mine shaft. And that was done by males sometimes as young as 7, 8, 9 years old. Today, if we have a 7, 8, 9 year old help cut the grass, our neighbors may look at us and say, is that child abuse that you have your 8 year old out, pushing a lawnmower? And is that appropriate for an 8 year old? So we continue to define and redefine the role of children in society. And we will look at that, throughout this course. So that goes on to the second paragraph there on the syllabus, our ambivalence, and then our kind of delving into the role of protecting children. There's another documentary or video that I often have shown over the years called The Unquiet Death of Eli Creekmore. And that was a little boy who was killed in the 1980s by his mom's boyfriend. And whether it was anyone else's responsibility to intervene in the life of that little boy, whether police, medical personnel, family. And there was a group at the time called, SOF, I think, Save Our Families. From a religious standpoint, the state does not have a right to intervene in family life. And I think that that movement continues to have some ground in society, so that we struggle with what is the role of the state, the government, and its representatives, child welfare, and the police department, and the medical community in the lives of our children. And so we will examine that as well throughout this course. Social work from its very beginning has been concerned about children's rights, going back to Jane Addams and the Hull House movement. She was very interested in children and families, early on immigrant children, and then later in her life, she began to be involved in the children's rights movement around safety and education and workplace settings and such. Okay, so that's kind of an intro to that rationale for the course. We will be looking at policy, research, practice, human behavior, all of your other courses through this course. So it's an elective course. This is the first time that we are offering this online, so it's kind of a pilot. So I welcome your feedback throughout the course about how this is going, what you think about the assignments. I do want to remind you that even though it is a summer course and we think, oh, summer course, that's going to be a piece of cake, it is the same course that you would be taking in a 14-week semester, and it's pushed and shoved into a 6-week time frame. So it has a lot to do in a very short amount of time. There's a lot of reading. There's an assignment or two every week. So, hopefully you will keep up on the work throughout the next 6 weeks. The other thing, though, that I want to remind you is that doing this online doesn't mean that it's less work. If you were taking this in the classroom, we would be sitting in class this Saturday from 9 till 3:30, and we would be doing that for 6 Saturdays. So at minimal, about 38, 40 hours of classroom work. So you're getting quote unquote out of that work by having this be online. So you don't have to be sitting in class on Saturday all day. But that means then that in some ways the expectation is that at least that 40 hours of classroom work will be done over the next 6 weeks. And that, me as the instructor and you as the student are engaging in a process to make up online that amount of time. Okay. All right. There's a list of course objectives. I'm just quickly going to mention them. We're going to look at societal values and historical tradition. We're going to look at strengths, perspective, and ecological assessment. We're going to look at culture throughout the 6 weeks as it influences children and families and child welfare. We're going to look at child maltreatment, what that means, whether it be physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, its antecedents, its effects, in what we are doing as a profession, both in prevention and intervention. knowledge of theoretical constructs as it relates to work with children and families. We'll look at risk and resiliency and the factors related to that. We will look at how to be culturally competent, family-centered, trauma-focused. We will provide a multi-system context for service delivery. We'll look at trends and issues in children and families and child welfare. We will demonstrate a familiarity with evidence-based practice, which I'm really excited about the way which we're going to do that in this course. We will look at ethical issues. We'll examine professional self-awareness as it relates to work with children and families and child welfare. We'll discuss standardized measures as they relate to working with children and families, and how do we measure not only in an assessment, but also in outcomes and how we can use standardized measures. And then knowledge of current child welfare issues and policy legislation that's been introduced. We have two texts, the Mallon and Hess, which I will refer to as the course text, and then what I refer to as the Perry book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, and other stories from a child's. I will tell you that that book is the book that in my adult life has really changed how I work with children and families. When I became a foster parent almost 6 years ago, that was a book that was given to me, and I went out and bought 20 copies and gave it to all the people in my life because I realized that the kids who were coming to live with me were represented in one way or another through so many of the stories in that book. So I hope you will, I can't say enjoy reading it because it's a challenging read. Certainly not something you want to read at night before you go to bed, I think. But it's a book that as you read it, I hope if you purchase the book, you will take a pen or a highlighter and highlight those sentences that Perry says that you go, yeah, that makes sense. What he says is something I've already seen or I believe to be true. He does talk a lot about brain development and chemical, neurobiological impact of trauma. I know some of that may be a little bit challenging to read. We will discuss that, and I will provide you some supplemental resources to help in your reading of that. Okay, so moving on quickly here to the schedule and the assignments. So as I said, it's 6 weeks. We begin May 22nd, and I have an end date of July 2nd, which is a Sunday. Our weeks run from Monday to Sunday. So when I say week of, it's talking about a Monday. And most assignments, if there's a due date, it's a due date on a Sunday, except for forums, which run a little bit different. So let's start with that. There are 4 forums in this course where there will be questions posted. You'll answer the questions by Friday at midnight. You'll respond to 2 classmates by Sunday at midnight. In your response to classmates, please ask a question based on what you've read, what they responded, and then you need to go back into the questions that were asked of you by the following Tuesday and just write a short response. Nothing, it doesn't have to be too detailed, but it's just my way of checking that you went back in and read what your classmates had written to you. 2 of the forums will have movies attached to them. The first one you're watching God Bless the Child, which is 30 years old at this point, but certainly has a lot to offer as a historical understanding of children and family issues and child welfare, and we're going to look at it both from historical and current contemporary. And then the third forum that you're doing, you will pick a documentary, and I'll have some more information on that forthcoming. The second is the chat sessions. We will be using Google Hangouts. We will do 3 weeks of chats where for a half hour you will log on to Google Hangouts. We'll talk about the assignments, the readings, a topic for that week. If you've never used Google Hangouts, let me know, and it's easy to set up. I will post a series of times, so it might be, they will always start on Monday, and it might be Monday at 7 p.m., Tuesday at 8 p.m., Wednesday at noon, maybe for those who can do it at their lunch hour or who maybe work second shift. Thursday it's 7, Friday at 6, Saturday morning at 8. I'll just have different times, and I will limit the number of people per time because Google Hangouts gets really slow if you have too many people on it. Both classes will be signing up for the same times. So this is the one assignment where we will cross sections, and I will limit it to 3 people in section 1 and 2 people in section 2 so that we get a mix of people from the 2 classes. If you get yourself into a situation where you miss your chat time, you can sign up for another time during the week. And if life happens and then you need to sign up for another time and that time slot is full, please just reach out to me, and I often can make accommodations. Okay. All right. So then the next assignment is the child welfare issue reaction paper, and that one's due pretty quickly in 2 weeks on June 4th. And locate in the media a news article. That's something that amazes me that sometimes students struggle with. It has to be a current, recent news article. I would say, I don't know if I say in here, last 6 months, maybe to a year, no more than a year. And so a newspaper article, um, maybe a magazine article would be okay, news journal, news website. If you have any questions about that, contact me. So you're going to talk about, what this article was about, and then you're going to go find 3 additional resources that talk about the same topic broadly, whatever the topic of the article is, and how those articles inform your knowledge on this topic, the reason that I do this is that this course I see as a stepping stone to your future as a professional social worker, and that I hope that you will continue to be lifelong learners and critical consumers of the news, so that in the future, if you read a news article, you might, still go out and look for additional information on that topic as it relates to your profession. If there are some in the course, and I don't know yet, from other professions, for example, mental health counseling or psychology, I apologize if I keep mentioning social work. It just kind of flows off of my tongue. As I know who's in the course, I will try and be more inclusive of my language and respectful, to who's in the course. But I just know that everywhere it says social work, it reflects broadly all of the professions that we deal with. And even for social workers, if you found a counseling article, related to your topic, or a medical article related to your topic, that's fine. It doesn't have to be just social work journals. Okay, D and E go together. That's the evidence-based practice. We're going to do a fact sheet or brief. You'll hear me use those 2 expressions interchangeably. I had people all confused the last time I taught an online course, because in one place I called it a fact sheet, and in another place I called it a brief, and people are like, what is it we're doing? So I apologize. It's you may hear things called, a brief, which is, a short document that explains something, in detail, but in a very short message. And a fact sheet, is similar, something you can hand out to others. My purpose in doing this fact sheet or brief is that uh, using a more creative model, you can put something together that you could share with your colleagues. It would be something you could hand out at a presentation. So it's a tool and an opportunity, to be creative in grad school, which you all too often don't get to do, but also to practice and hone some of those skills to create something that's not just in a Word document that's like A, bullet points, B, bullet points, C, bullet points. If you have any question on the formatting as you go along, let me know. The second part of that, that if you've had me for another online class, this is new, is what I'm calling evidence-based practice in the real world. And that's where you will work with a partner. You will each take what you did for your evidence-based practice fact sheet, and you will have a conversation about where could you do that in your own community. And how would you fund it? What would be the challenges to implementing that? Looking at where is it already being implemented? Is it in Pennsylvania or New York or New Jersey, anywhere? Or is this an evidence-based practice that's based out of, California, and it's only been done in a small community there? Um, but it's to take what we learn and try and move it, forward on the ground. So I'll talk more about this as the semester goes on. And certainly when we chat at mid-semester, I can answer some questions. I will be matching you up with your partner once I get the getting to know you information sheets this week. I'm going to look at, where people live, what type of work that they do. For our child welfare staff who are taking this course, I know that there are 2 from Lackawanna County, I believe, and 2 from Northumberland. I don't want you to work with someone who's in your own county, so that you get the benefit of uh, partnering with someone from another county to look at how these evidence-based practices might be implemented in your organization or in your community. These don't have to be implemented in a child welfare agency. It could be a partner agency, a nonprofit. For example, here in Lackawanna County, United Neighborhood Centers works a lot with Lackawanna County Office of Youth and Family Services. So for your implementation in the real world, it might be in a nonprofit or even a for-profit agency. That also reminds me, I will often refer to child welfare agencies as CYS for the most common acronym here in Pennsylvania. I do acknowledge that in Lackawanna County, we call ourselves the Office of Youth and Family Services. Other counties have created new acronyms to rebrand themselves. In New Jersey, historically, it has been DYFS, although the Division of Youth and Family Services, although I understand that some of that is being rebranded. In New York, it's CPS, Child Protective Services. So I will either generally call it child welfare or CYS agencies. Okay. Letter F is the mid-semester check-in, and that will occur between June 5th and June 11th. That's basically when we're going to have a brief conversation, each student and myself. So you can shoot me a text and say, hey, are you free, Monday at 6? And I'll say, yep, that works. And you'll give me a call Monday at 6. We'll talk for a few minutes. I will touch base, see where things are going, talk about the last assignments, answer any questions you may have, etc. It's a chance for you to get to know me to get to know you, and make sure that we're moving in the right direction. The next is what I'm calling a research assignment, and that is based on legislation, not research. I really should have called it a legislation assignment. So you're to identify state and or federal legislation that has been enacted in the last 5 years, meaning it's been passed. Some people struggle with what that means. If you're not sure, please let me know and I will go over it with you. Related to children or child welfare, you'll do a one-page summary based on the questions I post on Moodle. And then as part of that, you will identify something that has been proposed to the 115th Congress, current Senate, but yet not been enacted. And I give you the website to go to find current legislation and answer some questions related to that. There are 2 quizzes in this course, each 10 questions. There'll be one at midterm, which is the week of June 9th to 11th, and then the last weekend, the 30th through July 2nd. I will post a study guide. The quizzes are solely on the Malin and Hess text, not on the Perry book. So that's an overview of the assignments. If you have any questions through the course, please let me know. I do want to just take a minute or 2 here to tell you a little bit more about myself. I know many of you in the course. There's quite a few that I've taught in another course in the program, but there are also several who I have not yet met or don't know. So I apologize if I'm telling some of you things you already know. As I said, my name's Leah Doherty. I've been affiliated with Marywood for about 30 years. I started here as an undergrad student in 1986, which will date me. I'm about to turn 50. And I worked at Marywood in the 1990s at the Military Family Institute. Around that time, I have worked as a social worker in a variety of capacities. I was the first HIV case manager in northeastern Pennsylvania in 1990, probably before several of you were born. I worked and ran a group home for persons with developmental disabilities, individuals who were very, at the time we would say, low functioning, and were residents, previous residents of Penhurst Institution outside of Philadelphia, which now you can tour as a haunted venue. If it's not haunted, it should be, given the experiences I had with residents who had resided there. And that institution was court ordered closed by federal legislation, and that individuals were to be returned to their county of origin and had to live in a least restrictive environment, hypothetically, never to return to a state institution unless it was reviewed by a federal judge. So I learned a lot at that point in time about the impact of legislation on practice. And that has been something that I've always paid close attention to throughout my career. As I indicated, I worked with persons with HIV in the early 1990s, funding through the Ryan White CARE Act legislation. So I got to see firsthand how funding came to states and to communities as a result of federal legislation. In the 2000s, I worked at United Neighborhood Centers and helped grow several of their housing programs through the McKinney-Vento Continuum of Care initiative. I then went on to Women's Resource Center and helped run some of their programs, grant management, and did crisis work. And then in 2010, I think it was 2011, a youth that I had known for several years and experienced a situation when she came home from college during her freshman year. She had been in foster care off and on throughout her entire life for the most part, and she had been at this particular foster home since she was 16. And when she came home at Christmas, things had not been going well with that foster family for several months, and um, they did not want to continue as foster parents. And so she was looking at what next in her life. She was 18 years old. And through some conversation, she and I talked about, her. She said, "Miss Leah, can I come and live with you?" And I said, "Only through foster care." And so I approached Lackawanna County Children and Youth, and we talked about some of the ethical concerns with, my becoming a foster parent, having known this young person, in her family over the years. But we were able to move forward, and she lived with me for almost a year. Her life has taken, many twists and turns over the years. She did not finish college at that university, but has continued to pursue her education. She now has a little girl who's a couple years old. And since that time, I've had 28 different youth live with me in foster care. I was permanent legal custodian, so that's one of the programs we'll talk about in this course, for a young man starting at age 14 who lived with me until he was 18. And I adopted another youth in January who's 10. So I have had children as young as 2, and the oldest was a young woman who came to live with me when she was 20, to remain in care until her 21st birthday. So I think I've experienced any number of aspects of, certainly from the side of a foster parent. And it has given me a lot of insights into not only the world of child welfare, the world of foster parenting, the world of youth who experience trauma, but also, social work, as I've negotiated the systems in our community on behalf of the children who live with me. So I hope I can share some of that with you through this course. I hope I can challenge you to look at the world around you and the services that are provided and what impact you can have as a social worker, what impact you may already be having, as a child welfare worker or as a professional working with children and families, and that, we can together continue to make the world a better place. The motto on my email is never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And I do truly believe that. So, welcome to the course. I'm excited to work with each of you and get to know you more. And have a great week.